If you or your partner are struggling to have a child, you are not alone. According to systematic analysis of national health surveys, approximately 10.5% of women experience secondary infertility, while roughly 2% experience primary infertility. Welcome to another episode of Blueprint to Your Health. I'm your host, Anna K. Simpson. And in this episode, we explore the issues of infertility with Dr. Andrea Carey, obstetrician and gynecologist. Before we start this episode, as always, here is our trivia for the day. How many hours do sperm survive inside the fallopian tubes? Is it A, 6 to 12 hours, B, 12 to 20 hours, C, 24 to 48 hours, or D, more than 40 to 60 hours? The answer will be revealed at the end of the program. We're here with Dr. Andrea Carey, obstetrician and gynecologist. Dr. Carey, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get right into it. Okay. What is infertility?
Well, infertility is a very difficult topic and discussion to have. It's also a difficult situation for a lot of couples. The World Health Organization defines infertility as that 12 or more months of active regular intercourse, and regular is not once a month. Right. Regular is at least three times a week, of unprotected, no contraceptive methods, and which no clinical pregnancy occurred. So pretty much after a couple who have been having regular intercourse, and they see that they haven't been able to get pregnant within that first year, we say that you should come and see the doctor. Right? Because truly, how efficient when the couple is healthy, you have an 85% chance of being pregnant in the first year.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
And by the second year, it's 95%. So if you haven't gotten pregnant in 2 years, that means something is wrong. Okay. Right? So the issue that we have is to sensitively discuss that conversation with both couples. And a lot of people, because of our traditions, we're willing to accept a woman is having difficulty. But we have to recognize that this is not specifically a woman's issue. Right. This is a couple issue. So 1/3 of the time, it is a woman who is having the issue. 1 in 3 times, it is the man. And 1 in 3 is a couple together. They could have children with other people, but now they're having difficulty together. Okay, I think because of our cultural and historic, people are more accepting of a woman having problems. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that quite a lot of times the woman is fine, and I have to sit down with the spouse and explain to him that we have an issue, and it is him. And because it is kind of challenging their identity as a man, lots of men are unwilling to do the testing. So we can make the first steps. Right. And so that's something that I hope that in the future we can stop. It's not about your manliness, it's that we are trying to overcome a problem and we need to do the testing. With the female though, there are a lot of issues there too. As you know, 80% of Jamaican women have fibroids. Yes. And for the most part, only about 1 in 4 of those women will have problems. And even a small number of women will have problems related to the fibroids causing infertility. But they are there. I have quite a few patients that once we took out the fibroids, they were able to get pregnant.
Okay.
But that's a small group.
Yeah.
But the more common things are hormonal problems. People don't seem to remember that we have at least 12 different hormones in our body working at any time. And if one is unbalanced, it will throw off the whole system.
Oh.
So we need to find out which hormone is creating the problem. A common one that I see quite a lot is polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a genetic abnormality. It's not something that the person did.
Okay.
It's a genetic abnormality that requires management. We can't cure you of it, not yet, until we do gene therapy. But we are able to manage it. And I have lots of ladies with polycystic ovarian syndrome who are mothers now. So it is a situation that can be overcome, right? But it needs to be managed properly. That is one of the more common hormone abnormalities. One that I even was having a talk with some teenagers recently was about tubal health, because that's the next area. So the ovary is where the egg comes from, but the tube is where the sperm and the egg meet. If there's a problem with the tube, what are the 2 commonest causes for tubal problems is an unrecognized sexually transmitted infection like gonorrhea and chlamydia. And of course, with the tube, endometriosis is the next one. For those who don't know what endometriosis is, it is when the lining of the uterus, the inside lining, which is where we bleed from, is elsewhere in the body. And if it's around the tube, when it is growing and regressing, it causes scarring to the tube. And the tubes, I actually call them the most vulnerable thing in a female's body. Even when we're doing surgery, we don't handle them much. That's why laparoscopic surgery, keyhole surgery has come about, is that we are using instruments to touch the tube because we are being very careful with them. So untreated sexually transmitted infection can damage the tube. Endometriosis could damage the tube. In rare cases, previous surgery where scarring had occurred around the tube could also affect the tube. But the problem is once the tubes are damaged, even when we try to fix them surgically, there's not a guarantee that they'll work. And often, if you don't protect those tubes, the only option for some couples is in vitro fertilization, which is very expensive. Even although it's more affordable in Jamaica than many other countries in the world, it's still very expensive for the average person. And it still only has a 33% success rate. So you really want to protect those tubes. We mentioned fibroids, which is the uterus, so we moved from the ovary to the tube. But, people who have had miscarriages or terminations and haven't been treated appropriately, they could have residual damage that prevents that a pregnancy could clinically have occurred, but it can't attach to mommy. And if it can't attach to mommy's uterus, then you can't get it's not possible to be pregnant, because it's that attachment that gives us the hormone that we find in the urine. So we have to, as women, and with our young ladies coming up, do everything to protect them, because there's so many areas where just a wrong choice can result in infertility. In the men, smoking is a common lifestyle factor that can affect the sperm count. I see a lot of men using their laptops in their lap. All that heat, it's damaging to your sperm count. So you're supposed to keep, God put the testicles on the outside for a reason. He wants them to be cool. So if you're like a driver or someone who spends a lot of time in your car, getting the reflective cover that we use for the cars when they're out in the sun, put it across your lap, because it can reduce the sperm count. In Portmore in particular, and Maypen, where I also practice, quite a few men sperm count, and when they make some lifestyle changes, sperm count goes up. But having a low sperm count, below 40 million, you're supposed to have 40 million or up per mil per teaspoon. And you're finding men that have very little or none. There's still options available, but it does mean that you're going to have to spend quite a bit of money to fix that. So if we can, again, same thing, make some better choices. There's some people who are born with deformities that might affect their ability to, like hypospadias, where they may not be able to ejaculate properly. Or if you have erectile dysfunction, this is another group that may have issues trying to become pregnant, but that can all be managed, right? So the thing about it, which is why I'm so thrilled about the 21st century, is that we have options that we didn't have, say, 15, 20 years ago. And it's more affordable than it was 15, 20 years. It was really, the treatments for infertility was a purview of the wealthy. No, it is still expensive, but it still can be. Let's say we find a young lady who she has tubal problems from in her 20s. We can probably start putting the money together to do the IVF if there's an issue. So there's still options, whereas before there were none. Basically, I think it's important that when we're speaking with the couple, that we identify the area. Sometimes it's something simple because we have a lot of people who one partner lives in one country and one partner lives here. So of course, if they're not having sex very often, the likelihood of having an intercourse regularly and therefore pregnancy is low. So we sometimes have to talk about having a little vacation together during the fertile time. So, but dealing with infertility, we have to be very delicate. We have to be really respectful. It is one of the leading causes for couples to break up. So we have to be very careful, not just the diagnosis of it, but the treatment.
How about signs? What are the main signs of infertility?
Well, the thing about it is more of a silent disease. It's only unless you notice that, boy, we've been having the unprotected sex regularly and nothing is happening. There's often nothing else to clue you in. Unless you may notice, boy, the period is a little irregular. Or boy, he said, boy, I used to smoke hard and maybe there's an issue. Most people won't be aware that there's an issue until the 12 months have passed, or even sometimes when a patient comes in and she says to me, boy, my partner's away, but we've been trying every time he comes home, and although it's infrequent, nothing, And I said, boy, even although it hasn't been the 12 months, let's just take a look, let's see, because you only have short, spans of time together, so let us find out. Can't hurt.
We go for a short break. When we come back with Dr. Andrea Carey, we speak more about infertility amongst couples. You're watching Blueprint to Your Health.
Our slogan says we are the people's station, and for more than 10 years, PBCJ has been providing unique content to this growing market. Let us show you how we can serve you. We are small compared to our competitors, but it's our size that gives us the ability to dedicate ourselves to our clients. We move your project from concept to completion, keeping our activities in-house so we can make decisions in a timely and efficient manner. We have a creative, energetic, and youthful team ready to take your ideas to the next level. So what can we do for you? PBCJ has mastered the art of feature presentations, studio interviews, and PSAs. We also stand ready to create content for your social media platforms and make your message accessible anywhere, anytime. We also provide streaming for your conferences, seminars, and workshops. And guess what? You don't have to break the bank, because our fees are some of the most competitive in the market. And just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we air it free. You heard right. We air it free for you. So call the PBCJ at 876-754-7225 or email us at production@pbcjamaica.org. We are waiting to serve you.
Welcome back to this episode of Blueprint to Your Health. In this episode, we explore the issue of infertility. In this segment, we go specifically to infertility amongst couples. We're here with Dr. Andrea Carey, obstetrician and gynecologist. Dr. Carey, in what ways does genetics impact fertility amongst men?
We're going to have to get a little nerdy here just to understand. Because genetics defines everything in our body, right? And specifically, it's going to define how the sperm are made. So if there is a problem at a genetic level when the sperm are being coded, it could mean that the sperm may not move well, mean that it may not be able to have the important sac at the top of the sperm that's used to break the shell when it gets to the egg. And there's countless other things that can affect how that sperm moves, acts, and is able to impregnate the lady. So it's important that although we kind of take it for granted, we assume that everybody can get someone pregnant, but there may be people who may not be able to, because on a genetic level, what was coded is not going to be sufficient to be able to do that job. And I think what we need to do is get away from what happens in couples is a blame game. Is that, okay, yeah, we're having a challenge, but it's not that person's fault. This may be on a blueprint genetic level. This had nothing to, it's not a choice at the person. But you may very well get genetic changes with lifestyle choices. Smoking, heavy alcohol use, heavy cocaine use. If you're a gentleman that likes to spend all the time in very hot tubs and saunas, you're going to get some effect on a genetic level, because we are always adapting. And even on a genetic level, even although it's been made already, if the environment is saying, hey, we need you to change in a different way, and that way may not be beneficial to the process of trying to get pregnant. So we have to start really treating our body like the temple that it is, which is to stay away from the harmful substances and start to have a more healthy diet. Stress is a very important issue. It affects our hormones, and hormones are important, even in the gentleman, to ensure that he's able to, his brain will send information through different pathways to say how to make the sperm, how much sperm. Right. So it's very important that we don't just keep focusing on women, because men are having some issues as well. A common thing that something simple as having a varicocele, which someone doesn't pick that. It is an enlarged blood vessel nearby the testicles. That heat can damage the sperm, which is why we treat them. We remove the varicocele so that the gentleman can make cool sperm. So it's very important that we get away from the blame situation and start to be more supportive. Everybody, I think, in our culture wants to have children, and they will do whatever they can in order to do that. But it's important to get a proper evaluation by someone who is trained. I see a lot of ladies and couples actually going to all these herbalists who have conned them into thinking to sharing $30,000-$50,000 for some mix-up thing that they don't even know what's in it. And a few of them, when I've found out the names and got to research it, they were counterproductive. They were not going to help us at all. They were actually going to push us in the opposite direction. So we really have to be, what works for your friend may not work for you. So, and you don't know what was wrong with your friend, because she's not going to give you all her details. So you need to go to a practitioner who's trained in infertility. So certainly going to your gynecologist first. And if we need to bring in the urologist for the male partner, then that's something. If we need a subspecialist like the fertility specialist up at University of the West Indies, then we will know to engage them, because we have evaluated and we see what needs to be done.
Okay. Can you tell us a little more about the polycystic ovarian syndrome?
Why we have this very weird name is that about maybe 3-4 decades ago, we noticed that on ultrasound we saw a lot of women has all these what we call follicles, but on ultrasound we call them cysts, in their ovary. So, and they noticed that lots of these women had hormone problems. They couldn't kind of make out anyway, through research over the last couple of decades, we now know what's going on. It's a genetic problem. It can have 3 different presentations. One of the most common is a lady seeing her period very normally, sees it right on time every month, but she's unable to get pregnant because she's not ovulating. Another group is that every couple of weeks they bleed. That's their period, which is abnormal. A period is supposed to last maximum of 8 days. So when you're going 14 days, 21 days, and I've had ladies who've bled for 4 months, and then came to be seen. So you bleed quite significantly, but it does mean that you're not balanced because you're only supposed to bleed a maximum of 8. So the next group is a group where they don't see their period for 6 months to a year. They all have the same condition, it's just manifesting itself differently. And it just means that at the ovarian level, the hormones are not balanced, and so you're getting all these eggs being stuck in the ovary, which is why it gets large and why on ultrasound you see all these cysts. And basically it can be managed. I'm always thrilled when a patient who we've struggled to sort out their PCOS calls me to tell me they're pregnant. Wow. So I actually don't call it a cause of infertility, I call it a cause of subfertility, because they're fertile. Right. We just need to sort out the hormone imbalance, right? So that is what I would say about PCOS. There are quite a few women, I think our genetic background, a lot of people do have it. I would say about maybe a third of all the ladies I see have PCOS. And it's either to manage their periods, the problems with their periods, or to get pregnant that we see them. And I'm so pleased when we get it under control.
Can someone's blood type affect them getting pregnant?
A little more nerdy stuff here. Not specifically the type. There's 4 types really. There's A, B, AB, and O. It's not that part of the blood type that could affect pregnancy or fertility. It's really what we call the rhesus factor. If you're plus or negative, right? So you either have this particular protein on your blood cells, which gives you a plus, or you don't have it, which makes you a minus. Okay. It really doesn't affect fertility specifically, but if the result of it can overall affect your ability to have a successful pregnancy. So basically, if you and your spouse were both positive, we wouldn't worry about you. Okay? If you were negative and your spouse was positive and you're having a baby, our concern is that because positivity is dominant, your baby is more likely to be positive as well. So it's not the blood type specifically, it's the rhesus factor. And the first time you get pregnant, even if baby was different and you weren't identified until late, it wouldn't affect that pregnancy. But because your body is to notify itself, hey, I picked up something strange in her blood. And the response your body always makes is, hey, let's make some antibodies. Let's fight this new strange thing. So it's your baby. It has this factor that is not similar to mommy. So antibodies are made. Doesn't affect the first pregnancy. But if it happens again and baby is positive, remembering you're still negative, you'll always be negative, then your antibodies that you made from last time are going to recognize it and start fighting.
So if it happens the first time, if you get pregnant the first time, fine.
Fine.
The second time has a less chance.
No, you get pregnant, but the baby's under attack by your
More
blood.
than the first pregnancy?
You wouldn't have been under attack the first time. Because remember, it's not until it's often in the 3rd trimester that mommy's and baby's blood mixes a little bit. Your body wouldn't have picked it up until very late in the first pregnancy.
So the second pregnancy is alert.
It's alert, and it's and typical immunity response is that it's faster, quicker. So it's gonna pick it up earlier, and so it's gonna start attacking the blood cells for the baby.
And then what's the worst that could happen? Miscarriage?
Oh my gosh, yes. And fetal anemia. Oh yeah, it's a common thing, which is why one of the first things we do when we do blood testing is to find out what blood group mommy is. It's very important.
That's actually the
Right.
first I've
So
heard that.
the problem is that first baby would have been fine, but second baby might have fetal anemia, and it can even result in fetal death, right? But luckily, even at Victoria Jubilee, we just did a fetal blood transfusion whilst mommy was still pregnant, and that was to fix that problem.
And success.
Yes, successful.
Okay.
Delivered a healthy baby.
It's very good. Now, nowadays, we see where more persons are making the decision to start their families at a later time in their lives.
Sure.
How can that affect couples in terms of infertility?
I take this a little personal because I was pursuing my career and I had my children in my mid-30s. And it's always a concern because you're older. You're aware that the doctors keep saying 35 and older is advanced maternal age. And then you're like, oh my gosh, that means something bad, right? It doesn't. That's the good news. If you're healthy, as in every time, you want to be as healthy as possible, which is why our new initiative as OBGYNs is to push everybody to come in for a pre-pregnancy checkup, right? Because we want to make sure you're healthy enough to be pregnant. And if there's anything that we need to fix or improve upon so that you can go through your pregnancy successfully and healthily. So what's interesting is that this advanced maternal age, I have a lot of ladies in their late 30s, 40s. My oldest patient was 45. I'm not going to say that I didn't have a heightened concern for them, or that diabetes, hypertension, heart disease is more possible. Kidney problems are more possible as you get older. But you do that even for a person who's not 35 and over. But your possibility of running into those kind of troubles increases as you get over 35. But I think women should go ahead and do what they have to do. I hear that there are loans being offered for ladies, or they're suggesting that we're to get loans to freeze our eggs if we want to, so that we can pursue our dreams. But the real big concern when you get older is the risk of Down syndrome, right? It is a genetic disease. It doesn't have to happen because the mother is older. It can happen younger women. I had 2 patients when I used to work up at UAE who were under the age of 35 who had babies with Downs. And that's why we can do testing prenatally whilst you're still pregnant, or as early as 10 weeks now. That won't be harmful to you or baby, to see if baby's at risk for Downs. But the good news is that our population doesn't see the level of Downs that Canada and America and England. You think of how many women you know who are over 35 and 40. You rarely see a child with Down syndrome. So I tell patients not to worry. We still do the testing if they're going to be particularly concerned. And of course, the ultrasound at 5 months will help to identify if there's a pregnancy that is abnormal. But what's important is really to recognize that the other chronic illnesses can kick in a lot because you're older.
Dr. Carey, thank you so much for your enlightenment and your powerful message. It has truly been helpful.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. This is Blueprint to Your Health, tips and tools for healthier you. Stay tuned for the answer to your trivia. Your trivia question for the day was, how many hours do sperm survive inside the fallopian tubes? A, 6 to 12 hours. B, 12 to 20 hours. C, 24 to 48 hours. Or D, more than 40 to 60 hours. If you answered D, you're correct. When sperm are inside a woman's body, they can live for up to 5 days. If you're a man and you have sex even a few days before your partner ovulates, there's a chance she may get pregnant.